Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. In today's video, we're going to be rebuilding the front wheel on that old auction find John Deere BN. And what I mean by rebuilding, of course, we're going to put a new tire and tube on it. I'm going to split the rim. We're going to take care of all the rust. We're going to put new bearings on the axle. I'll give you the part numbers for everything I needed, tell you where I got everything. And I'm going to show you the entire process from start to finish. So once again, welcome. And let me show you what I did. Well, I think that ought to do it. She's good and stable. These things are rated for 2,200 pounds each, so I think we got plenty to support the front of the tractor here. These nuts are 1.5 inches, and there's one on each side. I didn't see these little pins here. There's a pin on both sides below the axle. So these pins need to be removed before the wheel can drop down. So it looks like I need to raise the tractor just a little bit more, get both axles dropped down out of those mounts, and it should come right off. It looks like this is a two-piece rim. It's got bolts around both sides. I'm going to take all the air out of it first just to get whatever remaining pressure might be in there, and then we'll see about getting those bolts off. This tire is just crumbling apart. Well, the nuts are 1 1/16 inches, and then the heads on the other side are 7/8. So let's see if we can spin these nuts off first and see if we have any luck doing that. Yeah, it's spinning on the back. Let's try this one. Rats, they're both spinning. I got to get another socket or a tool or something to hold the back. Holy cow. Uh-oh. That one's stuck on there. Let's try one of the other ones here. Well, let's try this stubborn one more time with the impact, and then if that doesn't work, we'll try something else. Nope. There's always got to be one bolt, doesn't there? All right, I cracked it loose with a breaker bar. Let's see if we can get it off now. Wow. So the tire is completely deflated and the bolts are out of the rim, but now what do we do? And if anybody's wondering, this tube had a moderate leak in it. I had to put air in it about every 3 weeks or so. Otherwise it would go completely flat. So it just wasn't worth the effort of trying to remove the tube, find the hole, patch this old cruddy tube. And then there's the tire itself, who is just literally coming apart at the seams. You can see how thick the rim is. It's in actually really good condition. It is showing signs of the beginning stages of rust and corrosion, but it hasn't really got into the real meat of the metal yet, so we're okay. Now I'm trying to figure out how to split the rim and how to get this axle out. And there's this little flange nut affair here. Not very tight. Well, let's get this all the way off and see what we can see. I think it looks okay. Threads seem to be fine. It's just a little bit gummed up from dirt. Whoa. Axles want to slide right out. On this side, I used an old piece of junk wood and put it over the shaft and run this nut down real tight just to prevent the axle from turning while I was getting that flange nut off. And that worked really well, actually. But now that the nut is off, this just comes right out. Excellent. There's something hard right there. That must be the bearing. And then there's something soft right there. That must be a felt ring or something of that nature. Yep. Looks exactly the same. All right, who's got an idea out there? It looks to me like it's rusted and corroded itself together, but I'm just not coming up with a good way to get this done. Well, I'm putting some penetrating oil into this crack, and you can see the oil actually goes down inside the crack. So that's good news. That means it's not completely corroded together. And it does that all the way around. I don't think I can hurt anything using that dead blow, so I guess I'll try that a few more times before we move on to something more serious. Yeah, we're getting separation. That's encouraging. You can see that, right? You know, at least we got something moving. Well, I aborted the wheel splitting plan just for a moment so I could think about it. And in the meantime, I got those retaining washers removed, and they weren't washers at all. They were more like cups. They sat down inside on top of the bearing, and the walls came up all the way on top of the outer hub here, just a little bit. You think this one's good to reuse? Anyway, the bearing is right here now. Now I can focus again on trying to get this wheel split apart. Well, the only way that I was making any progress is by hitting it on the rim with the dead blow on both sides. And I got it split a little bit farther. I managed to get the screwdriver down in there like a wedge. So I'm going to try this all the way around. Yeah, getting more separation. Oh, I think we got it. Almost, anyway. Oh, success. Wow. Pretty interesting, huh? This one almost looks like a normal brake drum, you know? It looks like it only makes contact with this other piece right here on the inside. You can see where it's wet. So we only had to move it that far, which is, I don't know, 5/8 of an inch maybe. All right, I got most of the grease out of the center of this one here. Everything seems to be fine in there, but the bearings aren't so good. I mean, they look nice enough and shiny, but it's just falling apart. Yep, there it goes. I don't see any part numbers on these. Well, it's been about a week. I've got the two halves of the wheel back from the Media Blasters, and they did an awesome job once again. The wheel has a little bit more pitting than I thought it did, but the metal is so thick that this is not an issue at all. For as old as these wheels are, you know, they really look pretty good overall. There's just a little bit of pitting here on this one. The rest of it's pretty smooth still. And this one's got pitting on maybe 50% of the rim right here. The rest is all right. I'll show you the inside of this one. This one's got some raised lettering in there, A1235R SS, and then down there that looks like a JD logo. That's pretty cool. This one here, I did this when I was taking the tire off. So I'm just going to fill this cut with some weld and grind it down smooth, and then we'll move on. This will only take a minute or two. That looks a little better. Nice and smooth anyway. That was the whole point of that. So for this pitting, I'm just going to put a thin layer of body filler over the deep stuff, and that'll help to smooth it out. I'll put primer on top of that, and then I'll put that rubberized coating on top of that, and it will be ready to paint and ready to put the new tube in. This one, I'm just going to do a little bit right in here. The rest of the wheel is just fine. One thing I never got really good at, never took the time to learn, was body work and paint. So I just stick to the stuff that I can handle. Well, fast forward about, probably only took me 15 minutes or so. But nice and smooth now. Remember, I wasn't going for appearance necessarily, I just wanted to fill in some of the craters. And they're nice and smooth now. So let's get some primer on these babies. All right, I've got the axle all cleaned up now. I soaked this in the ultrasonic cleaner probably for 3 hours total over the course of a few days, and turned out pretty good. And this is the flange nut. I also had it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and there are some letters on this and some numbers. B548R. That one's blank. This one looks like an upside down U. Anybody know what those numbers and letters mean? The axle has a grease fitting right here on this end, and there's a hole right there, so that must be where the grease comes out inside the wheel. Well, I think I got it clear. I've got it screwed back into the end and tightened down. So the only way to know is to pump some grease into this guy and see if it comes out this hole. And what it will do is it'll push all the old grease out and fill it with new. Wow. A lot of grease in there. That's all old. You can tell by the color because the stuff I'm pumping in is red and that's black. There we go. So that is good to go. Let's go check out the EvapoRust bucket. I put the 4 big wheel bolts in EvapoRust the other day. I think it's been about 2 days. And for those of you who don't yet know about EvapoRust, I highly recommend it. It's an excellent rust remover. It's not caustic. You can touch it with your hands, and you can reuse the stuff over and over and over again. So see how these bolts turned out. I put the big nuts in here too. Wow, look at that. All of this stuff was very rusted. So much so that I wasn't even sure if we were going to be able to reuse the bolts. But let's grab one. Yeah. Took all of the rust off. Now we just got to clean out the threads a little bit, and this bolt can be reused because it's in good shape. Nuts turned out good as well. 0 rust on those, and that's only after I don't know if it was 1 day or 2 days they've been soaking in here. All right, I got these bolts reasonably clean, and check this out. Look how nicely the nut spins on the bolt now. And they're all like that. Those are the washers that went with them. So this stuff is all ready to go. Now I want to actually put some color on the wheel, but just the inside area where that hub is, because I think it'll be easier to paint it now rather than when it's together. So I'm going to paint this surface and this cone and the surface here. All right, while I'm waiting for the yellow to finish drying, I'm going to hit the inner rims with the rubberized coating. All right, I've got it moved into the shop where there's some shade and there's no birds, hopefully. And we'll let these dry overnight. So when we put these together, we'll flip this upside down and put it right on top of this one. This inner ring here mates with that ring right there. The tire and the tube arrived in the mail the other day, and we've got these completely dry now and ready to be joined. And I think I'm going to take advantage of the split rim and just put the tire on one side rather than put the rim together first. I think that'll be easier. So first I'm going to put the tube inside the tire, and then we'll try to assemble it from there. I'm going to start by putting some baby powder inside the tire, just so the tube is able to slide around in there. And we'll get a little bit of air in the tube just to give it some form. I guess we'll start with this one, put the tire over the top, because this one is the one that has a hole for the valve stem. So that might be easier to put on from the top. Let's see. So I need to invert this and get that stem fed through this hole. Well, that ain't working. Let's try something different. Let's put this on first and then flip it over. Like that. Yep. Oh yeah, that's the way to do that. Much easier. Now this, put on and just line up with the bolt holes. So I guess I'm just going to get these nuts and bolts started, and then we'll tighten it together. That should work. Let's just say this is like the compass rose and this is north. The way they had it before, there were two bolts at west and east going in this way, and north and south they were coming from the other side with nuts on this side. So I guess we'll just repeat that. Okay, all the bolts are in. Try to get these started evenly. And if you look down inside there, you can see that the two halves are nicely mated. Also, you want to make sure that the inner tube is not pinching on anything. And then we're good to inflate this a little bit more, but still not all the way yet because we have to paint the rims first. So I knocked the old bearing races out and I covered one of them with tape, and I can use it kind of like an end cap to prevent paint from getting inside the hub. It works pretty well. Give it one last clean, and then we'll hit it with some yellow. And I learned this trick from Derek over at Vice Grip Garage. I've never tried it myself, but we're going to try it today. Well, I cut the hole a little bit too big somehow, but it's going to work the way it is. The idea with the plastic obviously is to cover the tire, but when you leave the tire underinflated, you can also get the edge of the rim when you otherwise would not be able to. This one isn't going to take much paint because it's so small compared to that rear one we did. All right, I'm going to let that sit and then give it one more coat, and then we'll flip it over and do the other side. It is 100 degrees outside right now. That's why I'm in the shade. Seems like not too long ago it was 10 degrees or so. Let's get this pumped up, see what she takes. I had to stop and take the stem out, let all the air out of it again, because the valve stem had kind of pushed back up inside the wheel, kind of maybe like 30% of the way, and it was at a bad angle, so it was kind of under pressure that way. So I got it back in the right spot where it wants to be, and we're gonna kind of hold it until we get some air in there, and then it'll stay by itself. All right, I'm gonna call this done. That's the shiniest this tire will ever be. The paint turned out good. I'm happy with the whole thing, how it looks. I did lose the cap for the valve stem somewhere when I was putting on the tire out there in the rocks. Well, I looked around in my drawer and I found a valve stem cap that's a silver skull. I don't remember buying these. I'm not sure why I own them. But in the meantime, I thought I'd put that on just for fun. All right, the next step is to get the axle rebuilt and reinstalled. It is now time to get this axle assembled and installed back on the wheel. I've got my new parts laid out here. These are the new bearing races, new bearings, new outer cups, and new felt seals. We've got the axle all cleaned up, the flange nuts all clean, and we're ready to assemble. Evidently, the BN factory front wheel components are not as common as some of the other stuff. First, I want to make sure everything fits, and if it does, I'll go back and give you the part numbers on all the stuff and let you know where I found them so you can order them too if you need. The things that go in first are the bearing races. They sit pretty far down inside the hub of the wheel. So let's see if I can get these installed. Hopefully they'll fit. If you look down inside the hub here, there's a flange right there. You see that? These races fit down against that flange. So it sits inside the hub about that far. I'm pretty sure I got the correct size. And you can see it's going to take a little bit of effort to get that down in there. I put a little lube on the outside of the race and a little lube inside there. I don't think there's anything magical about this. It's just going to take some force. And by the way, getting them out wasn't easy either. But John Deere made a couple of notches there on both sides, so you can take a big punch, stick it down from the opposite side, like if I'm trying to get the race out of the bottom part on this one. I can use the punch from this side and stick it through that notch and drive it out that way. So I've got my seal driver here, and this one doesn't fit perfect, but it fits pretty good. We'll see how this does for us. You could hear it bottomed out there. And I can take my finger and feel the bottom of the race in relation to that flange and make sure it's flush all the way around. And it is. So that's good. That was actually pretty easy. Let's flip it over and do the other side. Definitely don't want to put these things upside down, because then you'd have to drive them back out. You can tell which way is which because the bottom is kind of rounded and the top is straight cut. I know the bearings fit because I test fit them on the bench, but you can see it fits perfectly down inside that race. So the races fit. The bearings fit in the races. Now, I guess we need to get the axle installed, and then we can put the outer retaining cups on. And then the new felt seals go inside those cups. And hopefully the shaft will fit through the inner diameter of the bearings. Well, here's the axle. I don't think it matters which direction it goes, but the side of the grease fitting was on the other side of the wheel from the valve stem, so I'm going to put it back in the same way. First, we're going to jam this bearing with a bunch of grease. Pack it in there real good. I'm going to fill the whole interior hub there with grease. Once I get it assembled, we'll just use the grease fitting and jam a bunch of grease in there with the gun. So the bearing needs to sit like that for this side. And oh yeah, fits on there pretty well. No slop at all. I kind of got lucky with this because I forgot to measure the axle to see if it was still round or if it had lost any of its diameter at all, but it seems to be good. Let's put just a little bit of grease in the cup just because we can. And just put it in. Now you guys are supposed to warn me when I forget things, because I think this cup goes in next, and then the felt, and then the axle goes through all of that, right? Yeah, but it goes on between the bearing and here, so I gotta take the bearing back off. All right, so you can see how nicely the felt fits inside this cup. So far so good. I think I may have gotten all the right parts. So I slide the cup with the felt seal on over this end here, and that's a pretty tight fit. There we go. Now we're back in business. Now this bearing goes on the same way, like that. Now, put the whole thing in. This cup needs to be pressed in just like the races did. So I think I'm going to have to lay the wheel back down so I can hammer this thing in straight. I've got a couple of blocks underneath the tire here, so when we hammer the axle that way, the other end doesn't jam into the concrete and get damaged. Well, I don't have anything that large to fit perfectly on this to drive it down, so I'm just going to use a block of wood and just tap it back and forth on both sides. See if we can get it in that way. Well, I think that did it. Let's flip it over and do the other side. So here's what it looks like on the other side for the moment. You can see the race in there that we installed. The bearing obviously goes in next, and then the cup and felt washer. Now the cup goes in. Well, because this side is open, I can use my big socket here. Yeah, that works well to get it going. I've got the cup installed, and we just put the felt ring in now, and then this flange nut, and I'm gonna have to push this up from the other side to get this nut started. So I'll finish tightening this flange nut, and then in the meantime I'll put up all the part numbers and the websites where I got the stuff. All right, everything is installed. The only thing I don't know yet is if the flange nut is too tight. I'll have to get it on the tractor and make sure the wheel wants to actually spin freely. I might have to back this flange nut off just a little bit. If you see this little indent here, and also there's one on this side, those are where those pins sit. They're actually below the axle, so when I go to put the wheel on, it will be 180 degrees. The pins fit below the axle on the mounting piece on the tractor, and then the big nuts go on after that. So before we stick it on the tractor, we're gonna jam this baby full of grease. Now I have to line up the axle so those little indents are on the bottom so these bolts can slide through in the right spot. You can see what I'm talking about right there. That has to be pretty much perfectly perpendicular with the ground so that bolt will slide through that notch. I think it's pretty close, so I'm going to try to lower it back down and see if we can get it through. Okay, I think I have it. Oh yeah. I've got a washer on both sides. We're going to put a lock washer on this side with the nut. I went with grade 8 bolts, and they're 3/8 by 4. Seems to be a good length. If the other side fit, that means this side should fit too, right? Maybe. Just needs a little persuasion, I think. I forgot we were going to check it. That's pretty good. Yeah, I think that's good the way it is. Doesn't need to be any looser, doesn't need to be any tighter. Let's fire this up and get it over to the shop. I just want to put a little bit more air in the front tire. It's a little bit low because I didn't pump it up all the way when we were putting the tire on. All right, I'm gonna give her just a little bit more air, and then we're gonna shoot some more grease in it, and then we'll call it done. All right, guys, we've got another project in the history books. I think it turned out pretty well. I'd like to get that other rear wheel and tire restored, but I need to save up a little bit of money for that. And in the meantime, I think I'll get back to more of the mechanical stuff on the tractor because there's several other issues that need to be addressed. So I'm not sure what I'm going to start on next. Maybe the fuel tank, maybe the generator, whatever it is. I hope you guys tune back in for that. I appreciate you watching, appreciate the support. For now, I'll say so long and take care.